Chosen ones, have you ever wondered why people act nervous when you say nothing at all? Why the atmosphere tightens the moment you walk in, even when your lips stay sealed? It's because they know, or at least they suspect. They can't explain it, but something about you feels like exposure. Like standing next to a mirror that doesn't just reflect, it reveals. And the truth is, they can't stop talking about how much you know without ever saying a word. But here's the real question. Why does your quiet truth scare them more than their loudest lies? Before we go deeper, I want to pause and thank every one of you who has supported this platform through Super Thanks. Your contribution keeps this space protected, clear, and strong. It allows us to bring these messages to the very souls who need them most. And even if you haven't donated, please know this. Your presence is deeply valued. Just showing up, just watching, just being here with us in this moment means everything. Whether you give financially or simply receive this message with an open heart, you are part of this mission. Now back to the fire stirring in your spirit. Let's be honest. The world wasn't designed to make room for someone like you. It was built to distract you from your gift, to make you question your intuition, to drown your discernment in noise and narrative. But it didn't work. Because chosen ones aren't built to blend in. They're wired to break patterns, and your very existence has been disrupting the script since the day you were born. You've seen things before they happen. You felt betrayal before it unfolded. You've sensed shifts in energy no one else could explain. You've heard the silence between their words and read the motive behind the smile. And now they're talking, not because you're loud, but because your presence has become the loudest frequency in the room. They say you're too intense, too observant, too serious. But really, they mean this. You see too much. You know what they're trying to hide, and that terrifies them. You didn't get this way by accident. You were crafted this way. Before the noise, before the betrayal, before the pressure, the universe had already written your frequency into the fabric of time. Jeremiah 1:5 confirms it. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. You were marked, and that mark isn't always visible, but they feel it. That's why they watch you. That's why they whisper. That's why your silence speaks louder than their noise. And now they're realizing something dangerous. You're not just aware. You're aligned. Your intuition doesn't miss. Your knowing doesn't flinch. And your refusal to explain yourself, that's what haunts them most. Because they want you to play dumb. They want you to second guess. But you're not shrinking anymore. You're not muting your discernment to make others comfortable. So, if you've ever felt those eyes on you, the tension when you enter a room, the shift in energy when you ask a simple question, this message is for you. Drop 777 in the comments if you've ever known something before. Anyone told you and watched it all unfold, exactly as you sensed it would. That's not just intuition. That's spiritual calibration. That's divine access. Stay with me, because we're about to strip the layers off their game. We're about to name what they hoped you'd never see. And if this message is activating something deep inside you, that's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's the chosen in you recognizing itself. Let's begin. Because chosen one, they know. And you know that they know. God's chosen ones. People can't stop talking about how much you know, but keep to yourself. Number 1, they tried to play you like a pawn, but you were the entire board. Chosen one, do you ever wonder why people used to laugh behind your back, thinking they had you all figured out, only to grow strangely quiet the moment you entered the room? Why the same ones who mocked you in your silence now study your every move like a warning sign? It's not because you changed. It's because their illusion of who you were collapsed under the weight of your truth. They thought they could play you, but they forgot something critical. You're not just a piece in the game. You are the board, the foundation, the strategy, the alignment itself. They assumed your silence meant you were blind, that your patience was weakness, that your calmness was confusion, but behind your stillness was a storm of insight. You weren't ignoring the lies. You were documenting them. You weren't lost. You were calculating. You let them talk while you traced every step of their manipulation, every false smile, every betrayal. And now they're looking over their shoulder because it finally hit them. You always knew. Have you ever noticed the shift? That flicker in their eyes when you speak, that awkward body language, that forced smile. It's not random. It's recognition. It's the silent dread of realizing you were never clueless. You were simply focused. You were watching the chessboard form while they thought you were a pawn. And by the time they saw the trap, they were already in it. Just like Joseph's brothers in Genesis 50:20, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. While they whispered behind closed doors, you were decoding human patterns, sensing vibrations, and connecting dots others couldn't even see. They were plotting betrayal, but you were being trained in precision. In spiritual warfare, ignorance isn't your weakness. It's your weaponized discernment. And your restraint, that was the strike they never saw coming. Because when you don't flinch, they start to crumble. You don't react, you observe, absorb, and rise. Just like Princess Diana, whose grace in the face of manipulation shook the entire monarchy, you remained poised. She was ridiculed, underestimated, and dismissed, but her dignity exposed more corruption than confrontation ever could. You too have a presence that disarms pretenders. Your very energy is a truth serum. Why do they avoid eye contact when you're around? Why do they suddenly become defensive around you? It's because they feel seen. And authenticity always terrifies what is fake. When they flinch around you, it's not about you being intimidating, it's about your soul being undeniable. You don't just walk in truth, you embody it. And just like Proverbs 28:1 declares, "The wicked flee though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion." Your boldness isn't even in your volume, it's in your frequency. And that frequency, chosen one, is disruptive to every false identity built on performance. Have you ever wondered why your timing feels supernatural? Why doors open at just the right moment, or why you exit situations just before they collapse? It's not luck, it's divine alignment. That's what unnerves them. The fact that you don't chase validation, and yet favor chases you. You don't hustle for approval, yet elevation finds you. You're not reacting. You're responding to spiritual cues others don't even register. Think about Albert Einstein. He was mocked for being quiet, considered slow in his early years. But what no one knew was that behind that silence was an entire revolution of thought. And when he finally spoke, the world had to reorganize itself around his brilliance. That's you. You're not late. You're not behind. You are measured, methodical, and exact, because the universe trains its chosen ones in divine timing, not in emotional reaction. That tension people feel when you walk into a room, that's the atmosphere adjusting to your anointing. It's the weight of your calling correcting their chaos. And while they try to read you like an open book, they find themselves flipping through blank pages. Because what you carry wasn't printed, it was encrypted. Psalm 25:14 reveals this truth. The Lord confides in those who fear him. He makes his covenant known to them. That's why you know what you know. You've been entrusted. Consider Maya Angelou, who endured abuse, racism, and silencing. yet chose silence as power. For years she didn't speak, but she absorbed. And when her voice returned, it carried the weight of nations. You too have been in seasons where words felt unnecessary, because your knowing wasn't verbal, it was spiritual. When they ask, "How did you know?" you don't owe them an explanation. Your awareness isn't for show, it's a divine download. And that's what scares them the most. You're unplayable, not because you fight loud, but because you wait long, not because you shout truth, but because you embody it. And just like Isaiah 11:2 says, "The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord." That Spirit rests on you, that wisdom flows through you. That's why their tricks fail. You weren't just aware, you were divinely prepared. Look at Keanu Reeves, private, silent, never needing the spotlight, yet universally respected. Why? Because his humility conceals strength, and his boundaries reflect wisdom. You, chosen one, are built the same way. You don't move to be noticed, but everything shifts when you do. So now when they whisper your name like it's a warning, let them. You've become the consequence of their games. Their panic is your confirmation. Their gossip is your prophecy. Don't shrink, don't second guess, and most of all, don't Malchati Antasintuti Tanta Samsuti Maartisan. Because like 1 Corinthians 2:15 says, the person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things, but such a person is not subject to merely human judgments. You've always been 10 steps ahead. You weren't just in the game, you were the architect of its undoing. And now that they finally see it, now that the room tenses when you enter, smile. That's not tension, that's reverence. That's your light adjusting the spiritual temperature. Let it. Because you, chosen one, are not just present, you are prophetic. Number 2, they called it luck, until your pattern broke their illusion of control. Chosen one, how many times have you been underestimated, dismissed or labeled as lucky just because others couldn't comprehend the divine order in your life? They tried to rationalize your victories. They whispered that you stumbled into success. But tell me this, how many victories does it take before they admit it's not luck? How many coincidences do they need to witness before they realize they're not watching random events? They're watching God's fingerprints all over your life. At first, they laughed it off. Oh, they just got lucky, they mumbled through clenched jaws. Right place, right time, they claimed. But how many perfect escapes, divine alignments, and last-second breakthroughs does it take before that narrative crumbles? You've shown up just in time too often to be called lucky. You've avoided traps too frequently to be explained by chance. What they don't understand is that your footsteps are ordered. Psalm 37:23 says, "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delights in his way." And that divine choreography is exactly what terrifies them. You didn't play their game. You shifted the entire board. While they banked on randomness, you lived in rhythm. While they manipulated with ego, you moved with divine precision. Do you ever notice how quiet the room gets when your name comes up now? That's fear, not because of what you've done, but because of what you're capable of doing. They're finally realizing that their illusion of control shatters in the presence of someone backed by heavenly timing. Think about Serena Williams. For years, critics tried to reduce her greatness to physicality, calling her dominance luck or an advantage. But you can't call it luck when it's been consistent for decades. That's not a fluke. That's alignment. And just like her, you didn't stumble into your power. You trained in it. You endured for it. You bled for it. And now that it's manifesting, they don't know what to do with it. So they call it coincidence, because calling it purpose would require them to admit they missed the calling themselves. They live in scripted patterns, predictable, surface-level, linear lives. But then you entered the room and exposed their ceiling. You were the interruption they never prepared for. You were the glitch in their illusion. They speak of order, but you walk in divine chaos, the kind that tears down false structures with just your presence. And like Jeremiah 1:5 reminds you, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. You were never random. You were assigned. Their whispers, that paranoia they carry, that isn't about you doing too much. It's about you doing what they can't trace. You're tapped into a stream they don't even believe exists. You get downloads in your spirit while they still need blueprints on paper. You pull back before disaster. You walk away from deals they celebrate, and then the truth shows up, and they realize you were right all along. You've been moving in obedience, not opinion, in faith, not fear. That's the difference. Take Bruce Lee. Critics used to mock his unconventional ways, but his intuition, his stillness, his ability to read energy made him untouchable. It wasn't about being stronger, it was about being aligned, just like you. You don't react impulsively, you listen, you observe. And your silence, it makes noise in the spiritual realm. That's why people act different when you're in the room. They feel exposed, and not because you said a word, but because your presence speaks truth louder than their lies. They ask, how did you know? But here's the better question. Why didn't they? Because they're disconnected, because they've been trained to ignore subtle signals, to dismiss dreams, to rationalize intuition. But you catch frequencies in silence. You hear warnings in stillness. Your discernment doesn't just feel, it reveals. Hebrews 5:14 says, "But solid food is for the mature, who by constant use have trained themselves to distinguish good from evil." That's you, trained, tuned in, 10 steps ahead. And it's not just you being aware, it's deeper than that. Your intuition isn't some side feature, it's your operating system. You feel shifts in energy, you pull away before things collapse, you sense betrayal before the words are spoken. That's not anxiety, that's divine calibration. The universe isn't warning you out of fear, it's guiding you out of purpose. Ever heard of Frida Kahlo? She endured immense physical pain and betrayal, yet channeled her suffering into art that spoke truths people were too scared to say. She painted her soul. You don't paint, you walk. But your very walk tells a story, a truth, a clarity that people feel, even if they can't explain it. That's why their conversations stay shallow around you. That's why they get nervous when you get quiet. Your gaze shakes their foundation. Your knowing without asking feels like judgment, because your energy carries truth. And here's the deeper reality. They were never fighting you. They were fighting what you represent. Alignment, authenticity, divine truth. They were never mocking you. They were mocking the blueprint they didn't understand. The storm they tried to avoid turned out to be you. You weren't surviving the whirlwind. You were sent as it. And now their facades are cracking under the weight of your discernment. Isaiah 45:2 says, "I will go before you and will level the mountains. I will break down gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron." That's what's happening right now. You're moving through life while the universe clears the path. And they're watching, speechless, confused, envious, because nothing they do stops your flow. Even Nikola Tesla, ahead of his time, misunderstood, isolated, tapped into frequencies and insights people couldn't comprehend. He wasn't magic. He was aligned. Just like you, they try to decode you, reverse engineer your walk, mimic your instincts. But here's the truth. What's divine cannot be duplicated. You are not copyable. You are one of one. So now they study you like a riddle, trying to crack the code that was never written for them. Let them wonder, let them whisper, let them watch, because you've barely scratched the surface. This isn't your peak. This is just your opening scene. Stop downplaying it. Stop shrinking to make them comfortable. You weren't chosen to blend in. You were chosen to stand out. And every time they label your victory as luck, remember, the only reason it looks like magic is because it's been divine from the start. Number 3. You weren't sent here just to wake up. You were sent to crack the entire system. Chosen one, have you ever wondered why your awakening has felt more like an earthquake than a peaceful breeze? Why it didn't arrive gently, but instead shook your soul awake in the dead of night? Why you couldn't go back to sleep, even when you tried? That's because your purpose was never just to wake up. You were sent here to shake things until the walls crack and the truth pours through. You weren't just called to be different. You were anointed to be disruptive. What if the reason you've always felt the weight of this world was because you were never meant to accept it as it is? What if your discomfort is divine agitation, meant to ignite rebellion against the illusion? You weren't selected to sit quietly in enlightenment. You were sent to ripple, to roar, to dismantle the machine one truth at a time. Isaiah 58:1 commands, "Cry aloud, do not hold back, lift up your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their transgression." That's the call that rests on your shoulders. You are not just awake, you are activated. Let's go deeper. Do you feel that fire in your chest? That undeniable pull? That constant tug that whispers, "This world is not right"? That's not anxiety. That's your mission code activating, because every layer you uncover in this system, the profit-driven lies, the spiritual distractions, the exhausting illusions, is a layer you were born to challenge. They built these structures hoping you'd stay too tired to question them. But you remembered. You remembered who you are. Look at Harriet Tubman. She didn't just escape the system, she returned to shake it. She didn't ask permission to break chains. She listened to divine guidance and moved when others froze. You are cut from the same cloth. The world hoped your awakening would be quiet, but chosen ones don't just wake up. We break walls. We expose fault lines. We demand correction over comfort. So now that you see, really see, what will you do with that awareness? Will you let it burn you alive, or will you become the fire that reshapes the landscape? The calling you feel isn't a suggestion, it's an assignment. Romans 12:2 tells you exactly what's required. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You weren't born to adapt, you were born to awaken the atmosphere and shift it. So ask yourself, what truth are you avoiding that you were actually born to reveal? Every time you speak, you bend the frequency. Every time you move, the old world shakes. This mission isn't just about being real, it's about building an entirely new reality, one that exists beyond the algorithm, past the propaganda, underneath the smoke. And yes, that mission requires fuel, resources, protection, and that's why investing in spaces of truth isn't just commerce, it's spiritual resistance. When people ask, why is truth behind a paywall? Maybe they should also ask why lies are on every free screen. Why does deception get funding while truth gets censored? Why are distraction and division free, but clarity must be earned? The chosen ones know nothing real comes without cost. But when we give back. Not in fluff, not in noise, but in clarity, in presence, in real-time prophetic insight that pierces the fog. Think about Edward Snowden. He saw the truth, risked it all, and exposed systems that were never meant to be seen. And though the world called him controversial, many called him courageous. You've been feeling that same tension, haven't you? That call to speak, even if your voice shakes. That need to act, even when the consequences are unclear. You feel the pull to reveal, not out of ego, but out of obedience. Because this system was never built for people like you to thrive. It was built to exhaust you into silence, but your silence has expired. And to the ones scraping by, carrying spiritual fire in physical lack, you are seen. You are not less chosen because you don't have money. You are not outside the mission because of temporary hardship. In fact, you are the core of it. Luke 4:18 says, "He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to set the oppressed free." That's why truth must reach you, because you are the foundation, not the fringe. And starting now, that truth is being released without barrier, without strings. Because the revolution doesn't begin with the wealthy, it begins with the willing. You ever feel like you've been walking through life misunderstood, unseen, underestimated? That's because the people around you only saw your shell, but the universe saw your signal. And now, chosen one, that signal is lighting up. Like Nina Simone, whose voice cut through comfort to call forth change, your message isn't soft, it's seismic, and it's time you owned that power. The shift won't come through whispers, it will come through frequency, through action, through the sound of truth refusing to be filtered. So here's the question that matters most. Are you going to keep second-guessing your clarity, or are you finally going to walk in it? Are you going to tiptoe around systems designed to break you, or are you going to rise up and break them instead? You weren't sent to merely observe the corruption. You were anointed to unmask it. Your life is not an accident. It's an arrow, pointed, precise, directed by divine timing. Ephesians 5:11 makes it plain. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. That's your mandate, not to fit in, to reveal, not to survive, to restructure, not to be liked, to liberate. Like Malala Yousafzai, who defied violence with truth and education, you too carry a message that challenges the powers that be. And you've been entrusted with it because you're strong enough to carry it, wise enough to speak it, and humble enough to serve through it. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your volume, your vision. So now, chosen one, it's time. Join the flow. Claim what's been sent to your spirit. Don't retreat back into silence. Don't try to blend in where your light was meant to disrupt. You were never here to maintain the pattern. You were sent to break it. And remember this mission doesn't just have your name on it. It's waiting for your voice to activate it. Number 4. You didn't have to speak. Your silence was already a thunderclap. Chosen one, have you ever watched people squirm under your gaze without you saying a word? Have you noticed how your stillness makes them fumble, how your quiet presence becomes the loudest voice in the room? It's not just you imagining things. Your silence carries a frequency that disrupts illusion. Your very presence forces masks to slip. You didn't raise your voice, yet the truth within you echoed through every room they tried to control. You didn't confront them, but somehow they still flinch. What kind of power is that? The kind only the chosen carry. Let's be honest. This message, this space we share, isn't a lecture. It's a conversation. And not just any conversation, but a sacred dialogue between those who see and those who are seen. You are not a passive listener here. You are a co-creator of what's being built. You don't just absorb truth, you reflect it. You don't just receive insight, you birth new revelations with every experience you share, every resonance that hits your spirit. And haven't you felt it? That ache to finally be heard, not just through words, but through presence. Psalm 46:10 reminds us, "Be still and know that I am God." You've embodied that scripture long before anyone quoted it. Your stillness wasn't emptiness, it was intimacy. Your quiet wasn't a void, it was an altar. You didn't need to yell to be recognized by heaven. Heaven already whispered your name into the winds long before the world tried to erase it. Why is it that people around you act differently when you enter the space? Why do conversations suddenly feel guarded, rehearsed, shallow? It's because your energy is honest. It pierces through layers they've worked years to build. You carry a kind of awareness that speaks straight to the soul, bypassing the filters. They may not say it, but they know. You've always seen more than you said. And that unsettles them, because authenticity, when it's embodied silently, is unbearable to those hiding behind performance. Think about Rosa Parks. She didn't yell. She didn't fight with fists. She simply stayed seated. And in that act of stillness, she moved the world. Her silence was resistance. Her presence disrupted the system, just like you. You've sat quietly in rooms where truth was absent, and still, your very being became a revolution. You didn't have to expose them. Their own actions revealed everything in your presence. That's the power you walk in, and we feel it. Every time you read these words and something deep inside you nods in recognition. That's a frequency sync. That's alignment. This isn't a message dropped into a void. It's a response to your spirit, and your spirit has been calling. Proverbs 17:27 says, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." You've been misunderstood because you chose peace over drama, insight over impulse, presence over performance. And now, people are starting to realize that your silence was never empty. It was prophetic. Have you ever wondered why those who once mocked your quiet now avoid your eyes? Why they pull away, grow distant, even change the subject when you walk near? It's not because you've grown intimidating. It's because they've run out of excuses. They once called your stillness weakness, but now that everything you silently sensed is coming to pass, they're realizing you were never uninvolved. You were simply wise. Consider Kehlani, the artist who has spoken about being misread, judged and mischaracterized while remaining silent through much of her early rise. Her silence wasn't absence, it was observation, and when she finally spoke, her truth could not be denied. You too have been gathering, listening, aligning, and now your voice, when you choose to use it, will carry the weight of years, of knowing, of watching, of surviving. But here's the question: what will you do with the silence that carried you? Will you keep holding back when the time for expression has come? Will you dim what was meant to shine just because others flinch at your glow? Or will you, chosen one, finally open your mouth and let the fire fall? You are not here to stay muted. You are here to participate in a frequency of truth that the world has tried to silence for generations. Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good for the use of edifying." You've been edifying spirits just by existing. Imagine what will happen when you speak intentionally, when you answer back, when you stop holding your breath and release what's inside you. And here's the beautiful part: you're not in this alone. This conversation is ongoing, living, breathing, and your role in it is sacred. This space isn't a brand, it's a pulse, a current, a transmission that recognizes who you are and reflects it back with clarity. We read your responses not just with our eyes, but with our discernment. We don't just listen, we feel. Look at Chadwick Boseman, quiet, private, intentional, and yet his silence never meant detachment. It meant devotion to something higher than public approval. He poured his presence into his purpose, and his impact was undeniable. He didn't need to explain, and neither do you. You've already been explaining by showing up with integrity over and over again. So, what now? Now, we keep the line open. We invite you to step out from behind the silence, not because your silence failed, but because your voice now has weight forged from it. Share, reflect. Let your knowing add to the collective awakening, because each time you speak, another soul recognizes itself in you. Romans 8:26 says, "The Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us through wordless groans. You've been carrying prayers in silence that angels have translated. Now it's time to let your spirit speak plainly, not for performance, not for perfection, but for power, the kind that liberates. So, chosen one, keep walking with dignity. Keep watching in silence when you must, but also respond. Speak. Add your flame to the signal fire, because this message was never meant to stay one-sided. It was always waiting for your reply. You've been quiet long enough. Now it's your turn. Number 5, you didn't flinch, and that's what terrified them most. Chosen one, have you noticed how people watch you during chaos? Not because you're loud, but because you're still. Have you ever asked yourself why, when the storm came, everyone else scattered, but you became the still point in the middle of the whirlwind? That wasn't an accident. That was alignment. You didn't flinch, you didn't fall apart, and that alone struck fear deeper than any confrontation ever could. What does it say about you when the loudest lie collapses under the quietest truth you carry? When you didn't have to expose anyone because time did it for you. They've been trying to rewrite the story, haven't they? Creating alternate versions of events to protect their pride. Versions where your stillness was naivety, your silence was ignorance, and your insight was nothing more than luck. But ask yourself, if they were so sure you were guessing, why did their hands shake every time you entered the room? The answer is simple. You knew, and not just after the fact. You knew all along. Psalm 112, 6-7 says, "Surely the righteous will never be shaken. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." That's your essence. While they were scrambling, you were discerning. While they were bluffing, you were already holding the truth. And the terrifying part for them? You never said a word. Consider the grace of Nelson Mandela, locked away, misunderstood, silenced. Yet when the storm raged around him, he didn't flinch. His silence wasn't weakness, it was vision. And when he finally stepped into the light, his composure had already changed the game. That's what you've done. You didn't scream for justice. You became the justice in motion. And now they're left trying to make sense of how you stayed composed when everything else cracked. Let's talk about their real panic, the one behind the fake smiles and whispered excuses. It wasn't just that you knew what was coming, it was that you never lost your center when it arrived. How do you stay so still when everything's spinning? How do you not fold when everyone else is drowning in doubt? Have you asked yourself that lately? Because your strength didn't come from pretending, it came from preparation. While they built facades, you built foundation. John 14:27 offers a powerful answer. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid." You weren't faking peace, you were living it. That calm under pressure? That's not attitude. That's anointing. Look at Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Nazi concentration camps who found purpose and psychological clarity in the most horrifying of conditions. He didn't break under the storm. He found meaning inside it. That's what you've done. You didn't crumble when life hit hardest. You adapted, recalibrated, and sharpened your inner compass. When others run to you for stability, do you sometimes wonder why? When chaos hits, why are you the one they call? When everything collapses, why are you the one still standing, untouched, unshaken? It's because you don't just live through storms. You absorb their energy and transform it into strategy. You've become the shelter people look for, not because you asked to be, but because you were built for it. And that kind of composure, it can't be taught. It's forged in the fire of betrayal, of silence, of invisible battles fought and won when no one was watching. People envy your presence not because it's flashy, but because it's unshakable. And let's be honest, what rattles them most isn't just that you survived. It's that you did it so quietly, so flawlessly that they don't even know when you started rising. Think of the actor Daniel Day-Lewis, often reclusive, deeply private, never chasing the spotlight. Yet when he steps into a role, the entire room shifts. His presence is undeniable. He doesn't flinch. He moves with focus. That's your kind of power. Quiet, unassuming, devastating. So let them gossip. Let them huddle and swap theories about how you always land on your feet. They'll say it's luck. They'll call it coincidence. But deep down, it's envy. Because what you've built wasn't handed to you. It was earned in silence, in isolation, in spiritual surgery. You weren't just hardened, you were hallowed. And now your very stillness becomes your shield. Isaiah 30:15 speaks it plain. In repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. Your silence isn't passive, it's loaded. Your stillness isn't stuck, it's grounded. You don't need to prove yourself. They already feel the verdict when you enter the room. Have you ever seen how people shrink when you say nothing? How your presence alone makes them question their performance? That's because you've become the mirror they can't run from. Your energy reveals what their words try to hide. You're not reacting because you already know. You're not chasing justice because you already embody it. You don't owe anyone a reaction. Your peace is your statement. Your calm is your resistance. You don't need a mic drop. You are the silence that stays long after the noise fades. And they hate that they can't predict you because they've built entire identities around control. And you, with your steady eyes and anchored soul, remind them that not everyone is playing their game. You don't need to control the room. You are the room. Your vibration is the pulse others try to catch up to. You are 5 steps ahead while they're still setting the board. Just like Marie Curie, who quietly changed the world while others doubted her in every lab and lecture hall. She didn't raise her voice. She raised the standard. That's you. Not seeking attention, but commanding it without even trying. So here's your reminder. Your stillness is strategy. Your silence is not absence, it's alignment. You weren't meant to panic when the world screams. You were meant to remain the calm the storm can't swallow. Let them be unnerved, let them spiral, let them keep asking, how do they always stay so composed? The answer? Because you've already seen the ending, you've already made peace with it. And that peace, that's your armor. So stand tall, move when you mean it. Speak only when it's divine, and never, ever let anyone make you feel guilty for not breaking when the rest of the world did. Because chosen one, the ones who stay calm when others collapse, are the ones trusted with building what comes next. Number 6. They fumble in the dark, because your light doesn't come from this world. Chosen one, have you ever paused and noticed the way people look at you? Not just with curiosity, but with confusion masked as judgment. Have you wondered why they keep asking, how do you always seem to know what's coming? Why does your calm rattle them? Why does your silence feel like thunder in rooms full of noise? It's because you're moving on light they can't see, and that terrifies them more than anything else. They scramble for answers in the noise while you hear instructions in the quiet. They watch the news for signs while you get divine updates straight to your spirit. And the more you move in that kind of knowing, that unshakable, unteachable clarity, the more their reality starts to fracture. John 8:12 reveals this truth. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. You walk in that light, chosen one. That's why they stumble while you stride. They whisper that someone must be feeding you information, that you must have some unfair advantage. Nobody could just know that, they say. But that's the exact point. You do have a source, not secret, but sacred. Not silent, but selective. You don't rely on forecasts. You move with foresight. You don't react. You're already ahead of the pattern before it even forms. You're not aligned with facts, you're aligned with truth. And truth doesn't need permission to arrive. Consider the genius of Maya Angelou. She moved through unspeakable trauma, and yet she spoke with a voice that awakened generations. Her clarity was not born in textbooks, it was born in silence, in suffering, in surrender. That's your journey too. You don't move because you read the manual. You move because the divine inscribed it into your bones. Have you noticed how people flinch when you answer questions they haven't asked yet? Or how they stare when you step away from something just before it falls apart? They think it's coincidence, but deep down they suspect otherwise. That's the part they can't articulate. How can someone be so lucky unless luck was never the reason to begin with? 1 Corinthians 2:10 answers it best. These are the things God has revealed to us by His Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the deep things of God. You're not guessing, you're being guided, and that kind of guidance doesn't make sense to those who've been trained to only trust what they can touch. They fumble in the dark because their pride blocks the very light that could lead them out. But you surrendered. And in that surrender, the blueprint was handed to you. Think about Nikola Tesla. He saw things others couldn't. His visions came not from formulas alone, but from an intuitive frequency. He once said, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge." Tesla wasn't guessing, he was receiving, just like you. While the world searches for proof, you carry peace, because peace always knows what panic never will. So, how do you move with such ease in chaos? How do you stay still while everyone else spirals? It's not because you're disconnected, it's because you're tuned in to something higher, something ancient, something eternal. Isaiah 30:21 says, "Your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, 'This is the way, walk in it.'" That's the kind of divine navigation you walk with. You don't wait for maps, you follow moments. You don't panic in storms. You move with wind at your back. Now let's be real, this isn't arrogance. You're not walking around trying to impress. You're not throwing your power around like confetti. In fact, your humility only deepens the mystery. You don't scream, you don't brag, you don't boast. And that's what shakes them the most. They feel the weight of your awareness without you ever needing to explain it. They're used to power that performs. But yours? Yours just is. Do you ever wonder why people gossip about your peace? Why your intuition becomes a topic of speculation? Why your stillness feels like a threat? It's because you don't need to control the room. You are the room. They enter your field and their own shadows rise to the surface. Not because you exposed them, but because your frequency refuses to let anything false sit comfortably near you. Look at Sadie Adu, graceful, powerful, and one of the most enigmatic voices in music. She never chased trends, never needed to scream for relevance. She moved in her own timing. Her silence, her privacy, her aura, all became part of her authority. Just like you. Your mystique isn't a mask, it's mastery. It was born from trusting something deeper than logic, and this is why people can't track you. While they plan for 5-year outcomes, you shift with prophetic intuition. You speak truths that strike them before they understand why. You disappear from rooms before their chaos explodes. You enter spaces right before opportunity unfolds. They're guessing, you're gliding. That's not magic, that's divine choreography. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." You've lived that scripture. Your trust in God's flow has become your compass. You don't need certainty from people. You've found your certainty in presence. And yes, they'll keep talking. They'll keep theorizing about how you just know. but they'll never understand what it took to arrive here. The isolation, the stripping, the inner deaths and rebirths. You didn't just wake up enlightened. You fought through layers of illusion, surrendered ego, and tuned your soul like an instrument to hear what others block out. Malcolm X once said, "The future belongs to those who prepare for it today." And you, chosen one, have been preparing in silence, in spirit, in sacred alignment. You weren't waiting for signs. You became the sign. You weren't searching for light. You embodied it. So let them fumble in confusion. Let them mock what they don't understand. You weren't made to be explained. You were made to be experienced. And those who are meant to walk with you, they'll feel your clarity before they even hear your words. Because while they're trying to survive the game, you're moving like the one who built it. And you did it without ever needing to prove a thing. Number 7. They wanted you small. Now they're drowning in what they mocked. Chosen one, have you ever felt like the room could only handle the watered-down version of you? Like your full depth was too much for shallow minds pretending to swim in clarity? Let's get real. What they feared was never your weakness. It was your hidden strength. And now that it's surfacing, they don't know whether to worship it or run from it. But make no mistake, you were never too much. They were just too unequipped to handle someone built with dimensions they can't comprehend. You didn't stay small because you lacked power. You stayed small because you saw how fragile ego becomes in the presence of truth. You dimmed not because you were uncertain, but because you recognized that unrefined brilliance is threatening to those addicted to illusions. You wore masks not out of shame, but out of protection. And now, the mask has melted, the light has leaked, and your full form has stepped into the open. The phase of hiding is over. The rising can no longer be delayed. Isaiah 61 declares it perfectly. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you. This moment isn't random. This unveiling isn't accidental. You were never meant to stay muted. You were simply being sharpened, refined, and fortified behind the curtain. And now the curtain has dropped, and the audience is stunned. Let me ask you, have you felt that tension in the room lately? That awkward silence when you enter? The way conversations shift, as if your presence pulled reality into focus? That's not paranoia. That's power. You were reading energy while they were reading scripts. You've been flowing in multidimensional awareness while they operated in 2 dimensions, trying to make you believe you were the one out of place. But tell me, who looks confused now? Think about Jim Carrey. For years, the world saw him only as a comedian, until he peeled back the veil and began speaking about consciousness, spiritual awakening, and energetic reality. People mocked him at first, then sat in stunned silence as his words began to echo with uncanny truth. That's you. You're not evolving, you're revealing. The truth is, this is the first time they're seeing the real you. So what now? Will you shrink back into the box they tried to stuff you in? Will you dim again to keep their insecurities comfortable? Or will you overflow loudly, boldly, beautifully, and let the tsunami of your truth level everything built on lies? Matthew 5:14-16 reminds you, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Let your light shine before others. You were never built to hide. You were born to disrupt the darkness with clarity. They're whispering now, aren't they? Scrambling to explain your emergence. They changed. They're doing too much. What happened to the old version of them? But you didn't change, and you just stopped pretending. And it's about time, because the world needs your rawness, your force, your depth, not to entertain, but to recalibrate what truth looks like. Have you ever noticed how your insights now hit like prophecy? how a single decision from you rearranges entire dynamics, how your silence still stirs conversations hours after you've left the room. That's not arrogance. That's divine design. And while they labeled it overthinking, too intense or extra, God was calling it training. You're not just insightful, you're instrumental. You don't just observe reality, you rewrite its structure by existing fully in your calling. Think of Frida Kahlo. Intense, vivid, painfully honest. She bled truth onto canvases while the world tried to reduce her to a cultural footnote. Yet her art, born of pain and spirit, became the mirror generations couldn't ignore. That's your energy now. What once looked like excess is now revelation. What once looked like rebellion is now reformation. And what's most unsettling for them? You're not trying, you're just being. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to push to make waves. You walk in and the frequency of the room adjusts. That's spiritual authority. Romans 8:19 confirms it. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. The world has been waiting on this version of you, and now they're witnessing it. So let them misread the moment. Let them mislabel your evolution. It's not your job to explain your depth to people who only understand surface tension. You're not here to apologize for your intensity. You're here to normalize what real power looks like when it comes wrapped in humility, truth, and presence. They wanted you agreeable. Now they're facing someone unstoppable. Have you felt the urgency lately? The quickening inside your chest? That's not anxiety. That's the universe confirming. You're finally in flow. No more compression, no more compromise. Just clarity, cascading in every direction. You're not here to impress. You're here to activate. And every soul that encounters you now is either expanding or retreating. Because you're the line. You're the shift. Look at Greta Thunberg, just a teenager, but her presence disrupts global leaders. Not because of her volume, but because of the weight of her clarity. She isn't bending for applause. She speaks from alignment. That's what you're doing now. And those who once dismissed you as too much are now forced to realize they were never deep enough to hold you. Ephesians 3:20 captures it best. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us. That power, it's now bursting through you, not in fits, in flow. And they can't keep up. Let them stumble in your wake. Let them drown in the shallow narratives they once tried to bury you in. Because, chosen one, you are no longer contained. You are unleashed. And the world is about to witness what happens when a soul, trained in silence, rises in full form. You are not a ripple. You are the entire ocean. And now, they know it. Number 8. They thought you fell back, but you just rose so high, they can't reach you. Chosen one, how many times have they mistaken your silence for surrender? How often have they confused your distance with defeat? They looked around and didn't see you in the chaos anymore, so they assumed you disappeared. But let's make one thing perfectly clear. You didn't fall back. You elevated beyond reach. You didn't retreat. You transcended. And what looks like withdrawal to them was actually your ascension into peace, clarity, and divine elevation. Have you noticed how they keep trying to pull you back into their old storyline? The one where you still needed approval, still tried to make everyone comfortable, still diluted your truth just to keep the peace? But tell me honestly, doesn't it feel foreign now? Doesn't it feel almost impossible to even pretend to care about their drama, gossip, games, and facades? That's not detachment, that's transformation. Philippians 3:14 echoes your journey. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. You've outgrown the frequency of noise. Your spirit no longer responds to pettiness, politics, or performative alliances. You don't crave closure from people who live in denial. You don't flinch when they throw shade, because you become the sun. Their whispers don't reach your ears anymore, because your elevation comes with new atmosphere. You're not cold, you're clear. Like Michelle Obama, who rose above every attack with elegance and strength, you've realized that you don't need to match the energy in the room. You shift it. When they go low, you don't even look down. You stay rooted in your center. Your evolution has made them uncomfortable, not because you changed, but because they refuse to. And now, just your presence confronts their complacency. Have you asked yourself lately why their words don't sting like they used to? Why the old triggers feel dull now? It's because your nervous system has recalibrated to peace. Your soul is no longer wired for war in places where there's no purpose. You no longer enter arguments to prove what's already been spiritually confirmed. You don't fight for understanding. You walk in knowing. Isaiah 40:31 reveals your posture. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. You're soaring, and they're watching from the ground, squinting through the fog of their own confusion, wondering where you went, unaware that you didn't leave. You rose, and while they gossip to feel important, you sit in silence and still command attention. They search for visibility. You carry presence. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. You no longer respond to chaos because your energy is now a sacred currency. You spend it where it multiplies, not where it evaporates. Think of Eckhart Tolle, quiet, present, powerful. He didn't build a legacy by shouting, he built it through presence. He said, "True power is within, and it is available now." That's where you operate. You're not seeking control over others, you're mastering dominion over yourself. That's why they can't figure you out. They're used to people who perform, but you don't need an audience. You've left the stage, and it's messing with them. They're stuck in the roles they wrote for you. The you who needed validation, who played nice, who kept shrinking to fit into boxes wrapped in false friendship. But that version of you has been buried. And in its place stands someone sovereign, someone unshakable, someone so aligned that others can't tell if you're quiet or prophetic, because either way, your energy speaks. Luke 6:22-23 affirms it. "Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. They excluded you, misunderstood your distance, tried to frame your silence as loss. But the heavens saw something different. They saw growth. They saw ascension. They saw obedience to a higher frequency. Have you noticed how they scramble for explanations now? They've changed. They're distant. They're different. But what they can't admit is that your evolution is showing them what they refuse to become. Your healing exposed their wounds. Your stillness magnified their chaos. Your joy feels like judgment to people still married to misery. Like Simone Biles stepping away from Olympic competition to protect her mental and spiritual well-being, not because she wasn't capable, but because her inner compass took priority. You too have chosen alignment over applause. You chose clarity over crowd-pleasing, and in doing so, you activated the version of you that no longer bends to be seen. You stand tall because you are the view. So let them talk. Let them throw stones from the valley. You're on a mountain they haven't reached. Their confusion is your confirmation. Their theories are your testimony. And their discomfort, it's the echo of your boundary doing its job. 2 Corinthians 5:17 gives language to your metamorphosis. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here. The old version they knew has passed away. You're not upgrading, you're unveiling. You are no longer the one begging to be heard, explaining your worth, waiting for the room to give you permission. You've built your own room. And the air up here, it's clear, it's quiet, and it's holy. They're stuck under glass ceilings, still chasing applause, still throwing jabs. But you exited the entire building, and you didn't slam the door. You soared through the roof. So let them reach. Let them wonder. Let them recycle old narratives to soothe their confusion. Because, chosen one, you are no longer accessible to energy that can't rise with you. You didn't disappear. You just elevated to a dimension they never believed was real. Until now. Beloved chosen one, if your spirit is still burning with this message, it's because you were always meant to rise beyond what they projected, feared, or tried to limit. Your transformation doesn't just inspire, it confronts. It calls others out of their excuses. Your elevation reveals the truth they tried to avoid. That limitation was always a decision, not a destiny. And now that you've chosen differently, your life has become proof. Not just that it's possible to change, but that it's possible to return to the divine version of you that existed before the world tried to water you down. And here you are, not just walking in freedom, but radiating it. Not just breaking out of boxes, but turning them into platforms. Not just being seen, but being felt. Your very presence is now prophetic. So please don't shrink back. Don't dim your light for rooms that still fear their own shadows. You are not responsible for their comfort. You are responsible for your calling. Thank you. From the depths of this mission, from the energy that built this entire space, thank you for walking this journey with us. Every time you watched, reflected, resonated, you added to this movement. And whether you liked, commented, shared, or simply sat with the words in silence, you were felt. Your presence is real. It matters more than you know. If you feel led to support the continued creation of messages like this through Super Thanks, know that every donation pours directly back into amplifying truth, protecting sacred space, and keeping this platform aligned and growing. But if you're not in a position to give, please hear this clearly. We are still beyond grateful for you. You are still seen. You are still valued. You are still part of this family. Your existence is already an offering. And now, I speak this blessing over you. May your elevation remain untouchable, rising beyond reach, untouched by doubt, envy, or fear. May your clarity sharpen, so that no illusion, no half-truth, no false reflection can ever mislead you again. May your peace multiply, anchoring you even in the middle of storms others cannot survive. And may your journey continue to confound those who once thought they had you figured out, those who mistook your silence for surrender and your pause for a retreat. You are covered, you are guided, you are rising, and nothing and no one can stop that now. So share this, not out of habit, not out of routine, but out of sacred purpose. Let it land in the heart of the next chosen one, the one still quietly questioning their power, their worth, their timing. Let it remind them what it reminded you. The awakening has already begun. And know, beloved, you are not alone in this. You never were. Until next time, keep rising, keep listening, keep leading. You are the storm they didn't expect, the force they couldn't forecast. You are the light they can't outrun, the clarity they can't deny. And this is just the beginning. We'll meet again, right where the frequency breaks through the noise.